He said, I baptize you with water, but there's one coming after me that will baptize you with fire. Why fire? Because nothing remains in its present form when fire touches it. If you have made a promise that you don't keep, what are you? You are a liar.
Father, forgive them when they start exploiting their friends. Father, forgive them for backdoing their mans. Father, forgive them, I'ma just pray they repent. Hope they know favor ain't fair. I'm the reason they stopping.
God said, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, forgive your sins and heal your land. So don't look to them, look to God, look to yourself, break your covenant with hell and death, then make a covenant with Black America and let's help it.
Hello, hello, hello. Another edition of Passing the Torch, episode 16. Every time I come on, I'm like, it's an exciting day because of who I have on the show. And today, I mean, really, I'm excited. Personal mentor, adopted father. What can I say about this next guest? Mr. Henderson, been definitely a role model for me, mentor, / father. As I said, I made him adopt me after meeting him several years ago. At this point, it's been almost 20 years. I've known him and been blessed by his ministry and who he is as a grandfather, as an entrepreneur, as a dad. This young man has 13 children by the same woman. What an inspiration. Out of those 13 children, he has 40 grandchildren. What a man. Awesome man. So how befitting it is to have him on the show. I'm sad to say it's episode 16. He should have been number 1. But again, I'm excited. This guy is extraordinary. Like I said, entrepreneurial, family man, obviously. That many kids, that many grandchildren, loves his family, has been an absolute leader to his family, leading by example, hard worker, spiritually grounded, has taught his children well, his grandchildren excellent. His daughter Keisha is how I met him some years ago, and I've known her over 20 plus years, and she's a phenomenal woman, so she had to come from a phenomenal guy. So I'm just, I'm at a loss for words. I'm gonna get started with. He couldn't be here today, but we're Skyping him in, so we got him on the air anyway. So without further ado, Mr. Henderson, BKA, AKA, Pops.
Hey,
Welcome, Mr. Henderson. How you doing today?
hey, Triv, I'm doing great, man.
Good to hear from you.
Thank you so much.
Hey, well, before we get started, I don't know if you heard what I was saying about you, but before you say anything, I want to thank you, not just for coming on the show, but number one, being who you are, being a real man. Like these series that I'm talking about on this series, called Passing the Torch, is about manhood and the principles of manhood, what it means to be a man. I know in today's society, we have a lot of people that are misrepresenting what that is. And I call it the fallacies of the man law. that you have multiple women and multiple baby mamas, and being this tough, feared man, and not being soft but being hard, and all these fallacies that have been labeled to be a man. And after meeting you some years ago, I was thinking about it yesterday. It's been almost 20 years. It's been over 15 years that I've known you, and what you've been to me, as a young man that lost his father early, um, that was always have always sought after, a father like figure, because I think it's very important for a man to have that, in order to become what God has already ordained and destined for us. We need good guides, and you've been that guy. I mean, from a business standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, and just as somebody I can watch. And I know your children. I know how they act, how they move, how they love the Lord. Like, that's the direct, illustration of who you've been in their lives. And you've passed the torch. That's which is the name of our show. So I was saying earlier, like, you probably should have been the first one, first guest on my show, because you've been that inspiring male role model. But when my first question to you is, as a man and as a leader of your household, um, and understanding what today's society is illustrating as a man, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Well, first of all, I want to just say I appreciate you, and I'm very honored to be invited on this event. Extremely important. The other thing is, um, I heard some of the things you said in your intro. I'm sitting here thinking, I got a lot to live up to. And the thing is, I just realized how important it is to keep all these things in perspective and not be afraid to say the things you said and to receive the things you said.
Yes, sir.
So when I think about manhood and your question, one of the things I think about, we have to be intentional and not afraid or fearful in receiving and accepting our role. Every man needs to realize he's got important calling and expectations on who he is. And one thing that makes me think that you are successful, you are intentional, very intentional about seeking manhood and looking for man. And a lot of people aren't doing it. They don't even know it exists.
Yes, sir.
You look at our society today, and we have created a whole language to facilitate our behavior. Everybody talks it. They got names for each other. Yo, dog. We got to meet at the crib. The house is a crib, and there are players and everything.
Yes, sir.
And it talks about immature behavior that keeps us a child in our minds. And so, what's in our minds, we then begin to act out.
Right.
And so, I'm listening to you this afternoon, and I'm so proud of how you articulate what you're saying and doing.
Thank you.
And we could all, digress into the language, baby mama, this, that, and the other. But our behavior, our culture has created its own language And it's not necessarily something to be proud of. It's something you look at, and when you investigate our behavior as a whole, not every one of us, it's not positive. I have a lot of children, but I notice you emphasize with one woman, my wife. My queen and I have been married for almost 50 years. In 1 month, we will have been married 50 years. And my oldest child with her is not 50 yet. He was born 10 months after we got married. And so I'm very happy for that. And I can share that with them. But there's so many things that are involved in manhood. We become who we are. You're becoming who you are.
Yes, sir.
It's already in you, man. And then there's a scripture that says iron sharpens iron. And what gets me about that is you're already iron. I'm not creating you, but if I intentionally mention you, I can make it better for you. And I can help you become who you are. I can sharpen you. And you, in turn, sharpen me. Because allowing me to be who I am in your life helps me become more of who I am. But there's a great need for men today. Great men need for fathers to come alive and be who we are.
Yes, sir. And man, that's a lot. That's a lot. And I thank you for that, Mr. Henderson. And I have a few questions to go along with that. Meaning, somebody I respect and revere dearly. Um, you know, as a young man, I'm not as young as I used to be. When I met you, I was a young man. I was a good in my 30s, my young 30s. I'm getting a little older, but I still consider myself a young man. But as a man, I still aspire, daily to become better, to be, to navigate this world we live in better, to be more intentional on what it is that I'm doing to represent who we are or who I am as a man. And, you know, being unmarried and and watching you and hearing stories about you and seeing, the dynasty that you've created through your kids and getting to talk to them and know how they think based on what you've put in them is just so very inspiring, and I can only aspire to be that type of man. So what I wanted to ask you right now is that, you know I know it's many challenges, being a man, especially being a black man in America, and what we're needed for, and how we're pulled in so many different directions. So as someone, like I said, that I revere and I look up to, what are some of the challenges that you faced, growing up, growing into your manhood status? Because I know you went against the grain a lot with society based ideologies.
I have so many things that in my life that helped me, and I didn't even know it. For example, my, my brother and I started school in Taiwan. Back then, it was just considered China. And here we are, the only one that looked like us in a whole country and community, if you will. Wherever we were going, my brother's a year and a half older than I am. But back then, it translated in the 2 years, he was always 2 grades ahead of me. And typically that means we were in different schools. So here I am in my school. The only people that I could relate to that looked like me at all were other military children. And there might be a few scattered here and there, uh, black children or African American or children of color. And the people that we were around never saw anyone like me. They thought that our color would rub off. They wanted to rub my skin, and things that they believed were just what they were told by other people, and namely our lighter skinned brothers and sisters,
Right.
Anglo-Saxons,
Right.
white people. And they didn't know any better. They didn't know us. They didn't know who we were. And so going to school there, I had to get used to being different,
Right.
looking different.
Mhm.
And as a child, I didn't realize the depth of that, but I knew it was doing something to me. So it was uncomfortable, but I made it work. We made it work by just being who we are. And then you mentioned going against the grain. You find yourself going against the grain of your belief systems, your morals, your behavior, and that's all right
Mhm.
because it comes from a foundation. My father was ahead of his time. I think he was a brilliant man, but we didn't always agree on our standards because my mother took us to church. He didn't, but we came to respect our country. Started with our parents. My dad was so patriotic it was almost annoying because he was a military.
Mhm.
And I asked him why he got into the military. And I come to find out, he told me that was the only way him, as a young man or as a person that wanted to travel, had the opportunity to travel the world. And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
And so when we would travel, he would wear his military uniform. So we would get treated a special way. In certain cases, when we traveled through the South, he didn't want us to be poisoned at
Mhm.
restaurants. So when he wore his military uniform, there was a level of respect for the military that transferred to him.
Mhm.
And he did certain things to keep us protected. So it was amazing to me how he thought about things. And that gave me a perspective on thinking different. And another thing that helped me get through was my brother. We were close almost by default because we had to be close. But we fought like siblings do, and we did things and so forth. But by him being my older brother, he tolerated a lot of my behavior because I was something else, you know. But when you find yourself in society and you're a teenager and you're developing into young adulthood, you begin to realize I have some serious thoughts that are my thoughts and the way I believe things.
Mhm.
And it shows me that it's okay. You don't have to be the same as everybody. And I don't like being the same as everybody. I
Absolutely.
like
Amen.
my differences, but I didn't do it on purpose. It's the way it is.
It is.
So you can be okay with that.
Yes, sir.
It actually develops in you a sense of self worth and liberty.
I'm glad you said that, because I've never heard nobody else say that. And what I mean by say that is about um, being different. Um, like people ask me all the time, like, why I don't have any piercings, earrings, and tattoos and stuff. And I always say the same thing, which is I like my individuality. It's rare to see a man my age or younger without any tattoos, without any earrings, because that's status quo. Everybody has earring, everybody has tattoos, and I've always prided myself on being different. Um, like if I'm gonna be in a trend, I want to be the one starting the trend. That's just been my life. Even before salvation, I didn't know why I was so different. Um, but I was, and I just didn't want to be like everybody else. I was already short in stature, which I appreciated because I was shorter than everybody around me. So it's like I'm the shortest of all my friends, but it made me stand out. And I've always liked standing out. You know what I mean? Whether back then it was for negative things. I was the craziest, wildest, most spontaneous. But after salvation, I start understanding, my differences. So it was just, you know, different another way. Like, Trib doesn't curse no more. Trib doesn't drink anymore. Trib is not practicing, sex outside of marriage. It was just a lot of things that was happening that made me stand out even more. But again, I was used to being that guy, and I contribute that to that manhood piece because men have to stand alone.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
becomes a part of our life when we have to put the stake in the ground and say, hey, this is what I stand for. This is who I am. I can't be wavered by money. I can't be wavered by popularity or what someone else may view it as. I'm a man. This is my lot. And I'm going to stand on what they say now, stand on business and be who I feel that God has made me to be. So, you want to talk about some of the things that you had to put the stake in the ground with as a man, um, maybe in business or something that have to do with raising your children, things you might have had to put to the side because you had children and you had a responsibility.
Well, yeah, I'm listening to you, and I'm amazed at your thought processes, how you've expressed some things. Because I remember those thoughts that I had, and I remember feeling the way you feel. And when I met you, and my daughter introduced me to you, and we visit you at one of your homes in Toledo, I was thoroughly amazed and impressed that a young man at your age and position in life you were in had these goals and dreams and aspirations. And I fed off that. And it's like we are drawn to each other because of certain things that are similar, and you're seeking something and you can get an answer whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And the answers come so often before you even know it. But I remember when I was a young man and the temptation to just do the things other people were doing, I resisted that. And sometimes I didn't know why. I remember being after God, seeking Him when I was a young man. And I mean running after Him. I remember one time I was about 18, and I asked God, I said, is this all there is? And I was talking about my church back then. Like, there's got to be more than this. I became dissatisfied or not fulfilled by the church experience that I had, where I going, and I reached a level of relationship with God that kept me hungry, hungry for answers, hungry for life, and hungry for knowledge and the things of the Lord that would answer my question. So, as you asked that question, I remember when I was a young man in leadership in my job, and I was asking myself about certain behaviors. And I remember having the position that I would never ask my sons to do something that I wouldn't do myself or had already done. And I eventually, we had 5 sons. And the fact that I had these 5 sons just drove me to seek answers and to seek to be an example and to seek to set a foundation for them that they could follow. If they would choose to, they could follow the example that I set, not necessarily do like I do or be me, or but to be who they're supposed to be. And I'm so proud of them now, and I see God in their lives. It's not without challenges, man, or difficult times, but we have the ability to overcome and be the head and not the tail, and to succeed in everything. We can do it. We can do it. I was sharing
Yes,
with
sir.
my daughter how that the Lord blessed me to have a small team of people that, and when I retired, my company asked me to come back to help out and to train leadership and supervision and so forth. And I was on a special project. I'm not going to go into detail because I don't want to disclose anything that's proprietary. But we were in a position that the company was ready to launch a new line, a new product, multi millions and billions of dollars of investment. If this launch date did not start on time, it cost the company several $1 million a day.
Mm.
And we had a problem that threatened to stop the shipment and the build of products. And they already had a lot of products already built that were staged for shipment to dealerships. And there was a problem, and we found the problem. I only had three or four other people to help, and they weren't even from our company. But we went on site, found and corrected the problem, and were able to identify any product that was suspect before it got to our customer. So we prevented a recall, we prevented a stop build, and I was very happy about that. And it didn't hit me to how the magnitude of this behavior and this event was until much later, that when we were done. Sometimes, Trib, you're going to look back on your life and see how important what you did was,
Yeah.
and it's continuing, and the foundation you're building.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing to have men who are intentional, that said, I'm not going with the whole crowd. I'm not a herd mentality. I hate that,
Mm.
because if you're in a herd, your nose is in a place you don't want it to be. When you think about it, you're behind somebody else and you're in their dust. And what's on the hinder parts? When you're called to be a leader,
That's right.
you're called to be uh, sharing and shining, developing and becoming who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That
we
that
had my wife and I used to have a We called it a rap session.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was spelled RAPP. And rap was an acronym that stood for realizing all your positive potential. And you became a rapper, RAPPER, by realizing all your positive potential by pursuing excellence relentlessly. So when you pursue excellence, it's got to be intentional. You're not doing it for the accolades and the glamour and glory. Your heart is to help somebody. And I hear you talk about that all the time. That you want to help somebody else, and it's phenomenal to me that pay it forward program, how real that is, and how many places you can input that principle in areas of life and development. It's amazing. Now I'm hearing my grandsons that are saying things that just is incredible. I'm receiving reciprocity 3 or 4 generations later by something that I planted or I followed from someone of my ancestors who planted in me.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't even know who they are until you look back and you see what it is. It's actually phenomenal. And it's very humbling. I had so many people uh, come to me and say, they made it because of me. I just had a friend just tell me the other day, just 2 days ago, uh, and he's from your area. Uh, he lives in the Atlanta area.
Okay.
That how much I impacted his life. We've known each other since we were about 16, 17, 18.
Mm.
Right after high school, we met, and we've been friends ever since. That's what impresses me about you, my daughter. You guys are friends for life, man,
Yes, sir.
and it's phenomenal. You do call on each other anytime
Yeah.
and share things. If I know something, you're going to know it. If I found something, I'm going to tell you about it. And I love that. It just
Yes.
keeps things going. When I was coming up, I was alone in so many cases because there weren't very many people like me that I could relate to. So I needed to become relatable, relatable to the whole human race, not
Mm-hmm.
just me. And it just made me stronger and developed character in me that I didn't know I had. So I intentionally was not trying to be like everybody else. And I was okay being who I was.
Yeah.
I remember telling a lot of people, white men, that I'm very happy of who I am. I love being a black man.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any problem, it's not on me, it's on you. If you have an issue with me being something that I am and that I can't change,
Yeah.
it's your problem.
That's
It's
right.
not my problem.
And that's
And it
amazing.
made them look at things in a different way.
Yeah.
I was the original member of our diversity council at my business and job I worked at. And the one thing I was telling a man, a high ranking person from a big company called Price Waterhouse, and I told him he was a corporate executive. I said, at the end of the day, I want the same thing you want. I want my children to have opportunity. I want them to have a possibility of a great life if they so choose. And he thought about that, and tears came to his eyes. He said, I never thought about that before. I never looked at it that way. And I said, if people will take the time to talk to somebody else or actually care for somebody else, you'll realize we're a lot more
Yeah.
similar than we are different.
That's right.
But
That's
yet,
right.
the similarities are minimized and the differences are exploded. You just have to be able to maintain when that difference shows up because that's what makes you unique. Many times is what your difference and how you're different. And that is a great thing. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed by. It gives you liberty,
Mm-hmm.
that you can go anywhere at any time and be who you are.
That's right.
And you realize it's somebody else's problem if they have an issue with that. And I'm not breaking any laws. I'm
Right.
not trying to be immoral. I intentionally want to be faithful to my wife. I have uh, the ability to say I've never been unfaithful to her
Wow.
with another woman. After
Powerful.
50 years, I
Powerful.
can tell my sons that. You don't have to do that.
That's right.
And when I do tell them, I can be absolute about it because I know it can be done. And you know that our strength comes from the Lord, man, because we're
Absolutely.
attached to Him.
Mr. Henderson, I'm
And He
glad you
gives us
said that.
supernatural ability, man.
I'm glad you said that because that's one of the pieces of the fallacy, the man law that I
Yeah,
despise the most is that phrase when they say, "Well, he's a man."
yeah,
Like they accept the fact that we're supposed to cheat, that we're
yeah,
supposed to be unfaithful. He's a man. Like they say it so casually. I hear women even say it now. Like,
yes,
I mean, and I have family members, people that I've looked up to as some part of my life that feel like it's in a man's nature to have multiple women. It's in a
yeah,
man's nature that to sleep around. Like that's like whose nature? Like where is that? It's in the Bible. They had multiple wives. I mean, they always go back to that, and
yeah,
it's like, dude, come on, man, you can't handle the one woman you have, but yet you're talking
exactly.
about how you're supposed to. Because I mean, if we're gonna keep it real, even sexually, a man really can't keep up with multiple women. Like
Exactly.
we're not even made like that. And then
That's right.
let's
We'd
skip
like to
over
think we
sexual.
can.
Yes, but you can't. I mean, if you're being honest, you cannot keep up with the one. But but even bigger than sexual, emotionally, the emotions of one woman catering to them. How can you cater to multiple women's emotions in
Exactly.
one given day? I mean, it's so many different other things that if you're really honest or true to yourself as a man, you know better. It's
Yes.
greed. You're being greedy. I just want what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it started a long time ago. I think this manhood thing is something that's been since the beginning. And I want to go as far back as slavery with them
Yes.
labeling us one fourth of a man,
That's correct.
the black man. So tell me, you know, obviously you're a lot older than me. Like I don't know what it is to have to deal with that aspect of manhood, like with white America telling you that you're not a man.
That's very poignant question. And I just want to touch on some of the things you said as I answer that.
Okay.
It's true. See, it's like they had to tell us we're not a man to facilitate and minimize their treatment of us.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you want something to be okay, just diminish the seriousness of it and the legality of it, just like legalizing marijuana. Be,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a bigger drug problem than we ever had because we know when you open up and you be honest about it, that typically some of the chemicals in marijuana and so forth and so on, the drug part is a gateway drug
Right.
to harder, more addictive drugs and so forth, and dependency
Yes, sir.
and behavior. So now they're saying, well, when we legalize marijuana, we legalize it for adults, knowing that youth is going to have more access and it's going to be okay.
Right.
So the parents are saying, well, it's okay, since it's not illegal. And they're not looking at the moral implications of how you, as a father or a parent, need to protect your children. And you need to give them or create an environment that is going to protect them, not diminish their ability. Back in our day, parents felt pretty good, like, well, uh, I know my kids want to drink, so I'll let them drink here at home so that they won't feel like they got to go out and drink. And that was just uh, in a self excuse because the parents were unable to demand that we're not going to behave like this,
Right.
And then so if you want to behave like that, it can't be in my presence or in my house or whatever. So, like you're saying, how they come at us and say you're a fourth of a man or you're not a real man, when they use the slaves as a breeding animal, they use the old buck, the big buck slave to
Yeah.
make more. And then we have this later on. It became now you got to be married, and some of the slaves had no idea what marriage is. The
Exactly.
only ones that really had an idea of what it was are those who left, who were taken out of their cultures where they did
Right.
have marriage and so forth.
Hmm.
So the children born a few generations later completely lost all contact and substantial relationship to the marriage relationship.
Right.
So now, when you were talking about men wanting to be with multiple wives or multiple women as an excuse because he is thinking of himself and not his responsibility to cheer up the wife of his youth, to make her happy, to protect her, to provide for her. That doesn't mean she's unable to or
Right.
has any less ability at all,
Right.
because a woman is free to develop into who she's supposed to be. And see, most people think that means, well, we're separate. I'm going to give you a revelation here. Marriage is not a 50-50 partnership. That's absolutely not what it is.
Hmm.
It's where we each come with 100%. A
100%.
hundred,
Yeah.
100%. I
Yeah.
bring all that I am to the table, and she brings all she is to the table. Everything we have is ours, not
Yes.
mine, not hers,
That's right.
ours.
Ours.
When I hear people say that I'm married, I need time, I need space, I just need some me time. You see, that's defaulting back to the flesh.
Hmm.
We don't need me time. We need us time.
Us
And
time.
sometimes within that umbrella of us time, you have your own thoughts, you have your own plans, but they come up under this umbrella that makes everybody better.
Mm.
So like when they mistreat us and they act and behave like we're less than, we have to prove first of all to ourselves that's not true. That's not
Right.
who I am. And I refuse to be subservient I refuse to be less than because we realize beyond our human call, God has called us to be the head and not to tail, and it's above only
Right.
and not beneath.
Beneath.
So it's like I am called to tell them some things
Hmm.
because they won't even know the truth of the matter until they talk to somebody like me or you who know the truth, are living it,
Hmm.
because they can't speak for me. I
Right.
speak for myself. And I have told people that I don't need you to speak for me. Here's the facts of life. I told a guy one time who was my boss, I said, don't you ever bring my family into your conversation in a derogatory manner. You may not like me. You may be trying to set me up or whatever. He was trying to get me fired.
Uh-huh.
And what happened was he got fired. He went to another company
Oh
after
wow.
retired, and he came back to me personally, and he said, I made a mistake. He said, you were the best we ever had. And here's a guy trying to undermine me, stab me in the back. We've all been through that.
Yes,
But I mean,
absolutely.
it's personal your heart is to do the best you can.
And that's, I
So
mean,
I've learned and told my sons and my daughters, but my son specifically, you when you talk to somebody, you look them in the eye. You don't bow. You don't bow your head. You're not servant. You don't
right.
have to be out of order or disrespectful. If they are intimidated by that, that's their problem.
That's their problem.
You are as good, if not better, than anyone else, especially at who you are.
That's
There's
right.
no one on the planet in creation that can do it like you can do it because you're the only one like you. You're the only one. It's
That's
amazing.
that's powerful. That's
And
powerful.
I'm
I'm
Trib, I'm so proud of my son,
yeah.
my natural biological son, as well as my adopted son,
Uh-huh.
and those that allow me to pour into them and to
And
share with them. And now I'm receiving reciprocity from that.
yes, sir. Well,
When the
I want to
scripture
thank
says
you.
to a woman or to a man, your children will rise up and call you blessed, that's
Mhm.
reciprocity.
Yes, sir.
Because everything you put in from the seed is going to harvest and come back to you. It's incredible. It's amazing. Simple things like this sweater I got on. My son bought it for me.
Uh-huh.
I got some jewelry on here that my daughter gave to me. Everything I got on, this is my father's ring, and I wear it as to honor him because he passed away, and I miss him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he passed away years and years ago. I was grown, had my own children, everything. And all my children, every one of them, have a business or engaged in business. That
Nice.
blesses me beyond because you don't have to work for anybody else. You can work with people,
Right.
you know, but we find out what we are never by ourselves. You know, we're unique, but we're never alone. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're interdependent. We realize keep a balance that if I become a multi-billionaire, it's not, I didn't do it alone.
Right.
I needed the help and
Right.
engagement of other humans, other people. And we're not that gives us the liberty and the ability not to be afraid to share everything we have.
Right. Absolutely.
It's great.
And it's and I feel that it's a responsibility for men, especially black men, because
Yes.
we're
Yes.
so far behind the eight ball,
Yes. Yes.
and it's a plan. We all know it's a plan. You know, ultimately
Yes.
it's the
Yes.
devil's plan to
Yes.
destroy
Yes.
black men, which inevitably destroys black families. And what the society we live in today, these young men have no idea what that looks
No
like,
idea.
and it saddens me because I've had you know houses on the lake. I've had six Mercedes, Jaguar, two Escalades, motorcycles. I mean BMWs. I mean you can name like material. Like at
Yes.
the end of
Yes.
the day, when I look back at my life, none of that makes any difference. But the people that I've touched or discipled or helped
Yes. Yes.
in some way life become better, that means everything. It's like fuel. That other stuff is nothing. It's like dung, what the Bible talks about. It's
Yeah.
dung,
Yeah.
it's doodle. It means absolutely nothing. But for someone to come up to me and say, hey, Mr. Tridd, Mr. Lawrence, whatever they call me, to say, man, you changed my life. I want you to know when I was younger, some of the things that you showed me, giving me, direction you gave me, it changed my life. That's filled with so much. When you talk about reciprocity, it's
Yes.
filled
Yes.
with so much fuel to keep
Yeah.
going,
Yeah.
like to keep
Yes.
fighting
Yes.
this good fight because it's for a purpose.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
know me and you met on a business deal,
Yes.
but it
Yes.
was something about you when you walked in the room as you spoke. You came into my home, and the gentle giant spirit that you had on you, I recognized who you were in the spirit. Remember when the Bible talks about what was it? The Marys meeting each other, and
Yes. Yes.
the spirit, the baby jumping because it was
Yes.
she identified. That's that's the feeling that I get with certain people. Like you were one of them. Like it was like something like I have to know this man beyond this business. It's something that you know I know he's gonna give to my life. And at the time, I had
Yes.
a
Yes.
$750,000 home on the lake and high 30-foot ceilings, all the material stuff. But I still had a void that when I met you, I'm like that void was filled in some regards. Like man, this is a man of God. This is the true essence. Before I started a podcast, before I was big on manhood, I didn't understand, but my spirit knew.
That's
My
amazing.
spirit knew, and I'm like, this is him. So, and I told you, I remember. I don't know if you remember. I said, listen, I'm adopting you, regardless if you adopt me or not. I
Yeah.
need what you have.
Yes. Yes. I
So
remember,
I've just
brother.
been blessed. I've been
Yep.
blessed. We got. I mean, we've been on here. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes to finish this up. But I just wanted, I'm have you back on the show definitely because
Yes, sir.
you have so many
Glad.
stories that we can learn from, and I think young people especially need to hear from our elders and hear the stories, hear how they became who they are, and why they don't back down, why they're
Yes.
standing on business for who they are as black men in America
Yeah.
when we're selling our souls daily for money, for sex,
Yes.
for
Yes.
popularity. And it's like, do they know where we come from, our lineage? What I mean, we couldn't afford to sell out. Yes, we had what they
Yes.
call the house nigga or the sellouts that
Yep.
worship the white man to become you know their friend or thought about friend, whatever they want to call it. And then we had the rest that were like, no, this is who I am. This is who I'm gonna be. You're gonna either beat me to death or you're gonna beat me half to death because I am who I am, and you
Yes.
can't change that. And I think that comes with an inner knowing of who
Absolutely.
you are and
Absolutely.
understanding who God is in your life. And I want to say my beginning of manhood started as I started understanding Christ.
Yes, brother.
I was given a book by a mentor called The Power of Purpose, and I've stated this before on my show, by Miles Monroe, which was one of my greatest authors of all times. I love the way he thinks. I love the way he simplifies the kingdom of God and how we move as disciples, and as royalty in a kingdom, and God being the ultimate king. I love how he breaks it down, and that awakened that third eye, that spiritual man within me, to start understanding who I was in the gospel, like who I am in the spirit, how untouchable I am in the spirit, how he's already paved the way for my success. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm the righteousness of God. Therefore, I'm entitled to certain things. And understanding the contract that we're under, understanding, you know, who we are in God, makes us world changers. It makes us, you know, and infinitely strong and with authority to call those things that are not as though they were, and to come along with other men like ourselves to be able to disciple other men to understand who they are, and they don't have to settle. Settle for the thoughts that they have, settle for being drug addicts. A drug is nothing but a desensitizing mechanism to make you not deal with who you feel you are in the moment. So we get drunk, we get high, just or over sex, to not deal with who you are in the now, who you think you are. I'm not gonna say who you are, because who you really are, you don't know yet until you awaken that man. So, they keep feeding us drugs and drugs and drugs, and it's even in our foods now. That, and it's keeping our spirit man dormant. And and it's conversations like this with Mr. Henderson that inspires me and fuels me, and to hear that I'm not alone, and that you're still thriving at your age. And most people would have sat down by now and said, "Hey, I got a family on top of family. I don't have time for other people." So I thank you for taking the time to want to continue to sow seeds to young men like myself, and to every young man that'll be watching this show, um, because we need you. We need you. You had a situation a few months ago, some health scares, and God pulled you through. And I feel just for stuff like this, because your time is not up. You still have more souls to reach and more souls to inspire. You inspire when I promise you, Mr. When I think of you, you inspire me. Just because I know your children. I know you personally. They inspire me. The way Keisha moves and how powerful she is, and how just to hear her speak, sometimes in different, venues, like, she's a powerful young lady, and it comes from you. It's a direct sit down from you and your wife, and what you guys have put together as a unit, and it just inspires me. And I just want to thank you for being who you are, being obedient, being God's hand in the earth, and letting Him use you. When people pray, they say, "Oh, I want this and I want that," not understanding that God is a spirit, and He has to use a person in the flesh to get His will done in the earth. And so, but they reject us sometimes. Like, "Oh no, I'm not. It's just too this." I'm not. But you just pray for this. It didn't come in the form you thought. But what do you think is going to be? A ghost, a magician waving a wand, and it's poof. It's coming through a person. And I'm thankful that it's men like you, like-minded men like you, that continue to inspire me, to let me know I'm on the right track, and that you have my back. And when I can call on you, you're there to inspire me, to push me, and to piggyback on the things that I'm saying, reiterate, and even validate. Because coming from a man of your stature, to agree with me is validation, and it holds more weight, because you've been here a lot longer than me, and for somebody to say, "Oh yeah, Triple, you're on the right track, and what you're saying is correct." So
Yes,
I really
yes.
appreciate you. I love you much, and I can't wait to get you back on the show. Is there anything that you wanted to say
Thank you.
before we end the
Yeah,
this
yeah,
today's session?
yeah, brother. Everything you said is phenomenal. I wanted to say that the Lord's blessed me tremendously. So proud of my children, uh, sons, my daughters, my grandsons, my granddaughters, my son-in-laws. It's just all these wonderful people in my life, and my adopted sons, and so forth. I want to tell you a story real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, my oldest son, was assigned to make sure his siblings were on the bus. Now we have a lot of children, so in any stage of life could be a group of them,
Mm-hmm.
but we deliberately make sure that they're not group, they're individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But he had the responsibility to make sure the house was secure when they left for school in the morning. And he
Mm-hmm.
was the last one on the bus every day. One morning, the bus left them, passed them, did not pick them up. And they were out there at the bus stop. It was at the end of our driveway, so they were on time. So my son had to get all his brothers and sisters, go to another bus stop so they could get that bus. So when I found out about this, I called the school, said I want a meeting. I want the superintendent of the bus garage. I want the superintendent of the school. I want the counselors. I want the bus driver. I want anybody involved in this event. I would like to meet with you. And I wondered why. They took my kids to the back of the school. They announced on the bus PA, which broadcast through every bus, we're having trouble with the Hendersons. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what they said on it. So, and I asked them all that. I asked them, what are the rules? Why would you ever take anybody to the back of the school that's not conducive for people to get on and get off the bus? It's dark, no lights, all of that. So they had to try to make excuses for what they did. And so I said, now I want you to talk. Then I had my children in there too. I said, now I want to say this before I excuse my children, but this is my meeting. I said, I don't you never to ride this bus to the back of the school again. Don't you ever get off the bus in the back of the school unless there's some sports activity or some activity that's where you guys are getting on and off. You'll never do this again. And some of the officials said, Mr. Henderson, you can't tell him that. I said, now I'm gonna ask you very nicely to be quiet. Now I'm telling you, this is my meeting. I sat here and let you talk and answer questions. These are my children. You ever do this again, I will own the school. I will shut the school down and I will charge you with abduction and kidnapping. Because that's what you did. You broke the law and you broke every rule that you had. And then one of the bus drivers got trying to talk. She said, he's always the last one on the bus. And I said, thank you for that. It shows me that he's doing exactly what I instructed him to do. Not that it's any of your business, but it pertains to this situation. He's assigned to be the last one on. He's doing just what I told him to do. And I said, when he asked you why you left when you got back on the bus, I said, did he be disrespectful to you? She said, well, no. I said, well, what's your problem? What's the real problem? The real issue you left them? Were you having a bad hair day, or was this something else? That it was some time for some cycle, some monthly thing you deal with, or were you just having an issue with who he is and what he is, and that he asked you and you were held accountable by his question, and they didn't know what to do. I said, you're going to change your policy or you're going to act according to the policy. I said, none of them did anything wrong and you'll never do this again. One thing I want to say as a man, you have to be prepared to show up to establish and support certain things, and we must support you. We must support each other. We
Yes.
must be the backbone and the foundation for each other. Because we can do anything and everything we're called to do by the grace of God and the power vested in us.
Sir. Well, I love it, Mr. Henderson. Thank you again so much for coming on the show today. We're gonna have you on a couple times, and when you can get around, we're gonna probably, hopefully, we can do face to face. Get you in the studio. So we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to do. And again, this won't be the last. It's the first, but definitely won't be the last. And again, I thank you for coming on the show. I love you so much. Love your family, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. We're gonna close out. It's another edition of Passing the Torch, episode 16. Thanks a lot.